Hi, welcome back to today's session. In yesterday's session, we have seen how we use Jinja, and we created one template, very basic template for the login, and we'll continue from there today. Let me share my screen now. I hope my screen is visible. Please confirm once.
Yes, it is.
Varun, can you confirm my screen is visible?
Yes, it's visible, Rohit.
Varun, you're speaking something? I'm not able to hear you.
It's visible, sir.
Is there a problem with? Okay. You guys hear, you guys can hear me also, right? Because I was not able to, there was a problem with, I think, my system. I'm not able to hear you guys. Okay. Okay. So if you remember what we have done in the last session, we created a base.html template uh, where where we used certain keywords from Jinja. The common ones were block. There was something called as an include, where we are taking the whatever the file from the navigation bar, another file, and putting it like a copy paste. And in the login.html, we certainly look for how we can use Bootstrap, a very basic one there. And we understand the importance of giving the name, if you remember. So if we don't pass this particular attribute name to a particular input tag, we won't be able to accept that. And so this was the basic login page we created in the last session, if you remember. And now what we're going to do is, since we have already a one admin and a particular user table, so we'll try to create a login for that. And then we'll create a template for register, and then also the logout functionality. First, we'll cover these three things: login, logout, and register, how we can do all that. In order to do that, we will be using something called as session. You can think of this is like an session where we are storing the user information as a cookie in our browser. So how we will do that? If you remember, when we were having this discussion about a problem statement for this particular project, there were two things. That is, they didn't require us to have a very solid functionality like on this. We can have basic HTML page for the login logout and it didn't our application need not to be very secure. And so I told you that there are two endpoints where we're using a proper login frameworks, which ensures the user is being authenticated properly and stuff like that. And the first end was we just created an page, HTML page. We are taking the username input, we check in our database. If it's equal, we allow it to route it to the next page. That's the very basic login function. I when we were having this discussion, I told you that we'll be doing something in mid, and that is sessions. So this proper login frameworks do take use of sessions. So it would be like a very basic kind of login framework which we are implementing. And so this particular session is being provided to us by the Flask itself. So you can think of it like in a storage, like it is being stored in a cookie, and you can think of it like a dictionary where we are storing the username and its role, so that anywhere we need to check whether a user is being authenticated or not, we can just go and look at this particular dictionary called as session. It's not completely a dictionary, but you can think or you can imagine this as a dictionary which has the username and the admin which we would be putting into that. So that's what we're going to implement in today's session when we are implementing the login. So in this particular HTML page which we created, if you could see on line number 9 here, we defined something called as an action, which says that whenever I'm going to click on this particular button, which has a type of submit, to which endpoint I should redirect it to, and what is the HTTP method which we need to send. So if you will be clicking on this particular button in your front end, you will be routed to this particular endpoint which we have defined as /login for now, and there will be a post request which will be sent. So if you see in our controllers here in main.py file, we have only two routes which I created just to explain understandings. Like there was this slash endpoint and then slash about log endpoint, but it was just to test whether our HTML pages were right or wrong. And I since we would be creating multiple routes, so in order to do that, let's create a new file in controllers, and we would be creating multiple files for these routes, since login, register, and logout are kind of authentication routes which we are creating. So I would be creating a new file in my controllers with name called as an auth routes .py, which will this particular file would be handling all my authentication routes, starting from login, logout, register, or maybe sign up. So that's what we're gonna do. In order to do that, first thing which we need to do is from main.py file. Since you see here, right, we are always using this app.route. So if I'm going to use, I'm going to call this app.route into this particular file, auth underscore routes.py. We need that app thing in this particular file itself. So what we will do is from main, we'll import our app in this particular variable, which is refined here. So we'll import this particular variable. Where is that variable? Yeah, we have initialized this particular variable here, right? We'll import this particular variable into this particular main file, in from the main file to this particular file. The next thing is from Flask. We need to import various things. One thing would be to render template, and you know why we are using that, to render our HTML templates. And since we need to get the data from the request we receive, so when we click on a login button, a request is being sent to the server. In order to handle that request, we will be using a particular module which is being provided by the Flask, which is request. So request we will be using, and there are other things which we would be using, like redirect URL for and flash as well. But for now, I'll be just doing with this, and if we find that there is another routes which we need to import, we'll do that later. So for now, app.route, let's create an endpoint for login. That's what our new target is. So in this, we want to create an endpoint for the login. So I'm defining a new route which says that at the rate app.route login. I'll define a function called as login, and that's it. That's the thing. Now I have to put in the logic, whatever the logic I want to put for the login to work properly. I'll be putting it here. I told you that I would be using a session. So I would be importing from the Flask. I would also import session. So this session is also being provided to us by the Flask. So there is one thing. So if you remember in config.py file, we gave something called as a secret key. So I didn't tell you last time when we were doing this that why do we use a secret key. I'm not sure whether I've told you that, but the use of the secret key is to for us to this particular session works properly. And that's the reason why we have defined a secret key in our configurations. So session is so that's the thing. And now as we discussed, right? So if you if we go to the, let's say we go to the URL, let me come here. Let's say that this is my, let's say, local host. I just type this particular URL which says that localhost /5 semicolon 5 and the port number is 500 /login. So if I enter the URL like this, login. So if I enter and click, if I press the enter, that is I'm sending a GET request. So in order to handle the request, like there are different type of requests, which HTTP request, which can come to a particular URL. There can be a GET request, there can be a POST request. So in order to handle these two requests, what we can do is we need to handle them. And so we'll handle first this thing. So what happens, so I'll be sending same GET request to same endpoint, also the POST request to the same endpoint, that is /login. So what happens when I send a GET request, and what happens when I send a POST request? So you can think of it like this, that if I'm sending a GET request, I need to display the login page. That is, the server needs to send the HTML page to the client with that particular entire login form which we have created. And when a user enters the detail, and click on the login button, it sends a post request and it's come back to the server with the data now. So we need to take the data. We need to do some sort of validations that all the details which have been entered by the user are correct or not. And then after that data validation is being done, it needs to store the information. And since it's a login page, it needs to store the details into a session. After verifying from the database whether the password is being correct or not, all the data validation which being done, and then you route it to the home page. So that's what the logic which you want to implement in this particular function. So to start with, so the request thing which is here, right? So that we can check whether request is like a get request or not by saying that if request dot method if request dot method is equals to get. So what happens when we send a get request? We need to send the login page. So what we will do is we'll just say return render underscore template. Let's say login.html. And before that, here also we need to do some, let me comment one thing which will come back later at this particular point. We also need to check if user is already login. If user is login already, we may need to redirect to some other, like we need to redirect it to the home page itself rather than asking the user to enter the details again, stuff like that. So if user is login already, then redirect it to home page. This is one thing which is my target which I want to establish, but for now we'll leave this particular thing at a later. We'll do this at a later point. Okay. But if what happens if we receive a post request? So that's the main target, that what happens if we receive a post request. So we will do request dot method is equals to post. If I'm going fast and you are want me to stop for a while, or maybe slow down for a while, please let me know, right? Is my pace okay with you guys? Arnav, Varun, Esas.
Yeah, it seems to be fine.
There is something problem with my audio only. I have to check that. Please give me a minute. I think I'm not able to hear you guys. Can you speak for a while now? Can someone please speak something?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, the speed is fine, Rohit.
Okay. So now we want to handle what happens when we send a data from the client, that is from the form. A user enters these details like email ID, password, and clicks on the login button. What happens? So first thing, what it will come to this particular endpoint. It will check whether the request is a get or post. Since we have specified in our form in our HTML page here that it needs to send a post request when we click on this particular login button, right? So it should be a post request, and we have seen that in the last session that we were getting a post request when I was explaining what happens if I don't give a name and email ID and that name attribute if I don't specify. So there you might have noticed that there is post thing. Whenever we click on the login button, we are sending a post request. And so what happens when we send a post request? There is one more thing which we need to do, and that is right now we have specified this particular route like this, and we have not specified. So by default, this particular endpoint will accept only the what you call that as a get request only. If you try to send, even if we have written something here, if we have written the logic for the post as well in this particular endpoint, and if you click on the login button at this particular moment, you will see that we are still setting that resource not found, something like invalid. You will be getting an internal server error, something some, because we have not specified that this particular route should also accept the methods as post. So we need to specify that me methods is equals to get and post. So here in this particular endpoint where we are defining the route, we also need to specify which all method this particular endpoint accepts. So now I've specified that it would accept the get and post only. If you want to accept the get delete as well, that is also you can just specify delete one of that one more uh, element in the list, and it will also accept the delete method. But for now there is only requirement that it should have get and post, so we have defined the method here. Now the thing comes is what we need to do from the post request. User has sent us the data, we need to process the data. First of all, we need to get the data from the request. So first what we will do is so there is something called as a request dot request dot form. We can use something called request dot form to get the to fetch the data from the form data which we get. So we can store what all things we are sending from the login page. We are sending the email and we are sending the password. So these are the keys with which we are sending the data. So we can accept it like this. So first of all, email is equals to request dot form dot get email, otherwise none. So why I am using this get? So you can think of this request dot form as like, and you can access the form data like a dictionary. The information is being sent like a JSON object, and where you have keys and the value. Like the keys are the attribute, the name which you have specified in the attribute called as name. So we can accept that. But what if a user clicks on login button without entering the email? So it will throw an error if we have try to access request.form f4 form and let's say email. If we do, we can take the data from like this as well. But if we do like this, there is a possibility that you get an error because user has not sent the email, and from the client in the request you don't have an email. So in order to avoid and to do some sort of troubleshooting, we are using request.form.get. This .get method is very similar to what is in dictionary. This is like a dictionary function which you have in Python. So that's it. And email, we also need the password from the request. Password is equals to request.form.get and password, and it should be none. That is, if there is no password in a request, it should be assigned the value as none. So once we have received the information, we need to check if email is not there, that is if it's none or it's empty, or not password, that is I'm doing some sort of data validation here. So what I'm trying to do over here is data validation. And that is if the fields which I have the data which I've received is empty, if email is empty or password is empty, I need to flash the message and redirect it to the login page itself again. So there is something called as in flash which we can use. So there is a flash which will flash our messages on the front end client side, and saying that so how we can use that, we will flash the message that is email is required. We are flashing a message here, and we'll say that we'll redirect to the login page itself. So it will be displayed again the login page, and will also show an error saying that email and passwords are required. These can't be empty. This is one data validation. The next thing is if you want to check whether you have gotten a valid email. So there could be a different definition of valid email that you need to check. The basic validation which we're going to do is if @ symbol is not in the email. If @ symbol is not in the email, we'll flash the message saying that invalid email, and again we'll redirect it to the home. We'll show him the login template. where the user will be entering the new details. So you can do various sort of data validation at this particular point. Like the one we have done two validations. You can make the data validation the way you want, howsoever exhaustive you want. But for the demonstration purpose, I have shown these two data validation. One is email and password cannot be empty. The second is there should be email should be valid. And for my term in my terminologies, the valid email is just it should have contain an @ symbol. I hope this data validation part is done. You could add your data validation here, howsoever you want. But we'll continue from it. There is one more thing which we need to do now. And that is we need to check whether the user which the email ID which user has entered into our login page, whether that user exists in our database. So now we need to query our databases. We are querying our database to check for authenticity. So how are we going to do it? Like you have already seen these commands in when we were creating roles and users, and that is a user is equals to, and since we're going to check, we need these user models in this particular file here. We'll import from controller dot models. We will import every model which is present, every class which is present in the models.py file. And now I can use the user here, user.query.filter by, and the user, I think we have specified the email as user underscore email. So I'll use that. User underscore email is equals to email. And I'll check if the user, if not user, that is the user which we have received is not a valid user, will again redirect it to the saying that user not found, or saying that user does not exists, please register. So let's say that if we have queried the email ID and we found out that the user does not exist, so we'll be again flashing the message and we'll again redirect it to the login page. And next thing we need to check now is we need to check whether the password which has been entered by the user is correct or not. And if you see, we have not done any hashing at this particular point. When we were storing in the database, we didn't do any sort of hashing. If we want to do hashing, we need to check the hash passwords. There is a different, there are functions available to check that. But since it's like we have simplified our problem, so what we will do here is if user.password, so the password which is being stored into this particular user, if that is not same as the password which we have entered and which we have received from the user side, we'll check both the passwords. And if the password is not correct, we'll specify that the password is invalid, and it will redirect again to the login.html. And now there is a thing. Okay, I'll I want you to. So if you see here, we are using render template, and there is something also called as redirect. Redirect, yeah. And will you see how what is the difference between redirect and render template in a bit. But for now, let's think that we are just rendering the template login.html. All right, at this particular point where we are right now, we have checked all these things like user is correct, user information is there, user password matches. So at this particular point now we know that the user which is trying to authenticate is correct and is authentic. So we need to store those user details into our session, and that's where this particular session will come into play. And so how we do that is we just call session, and we create the, let's say we need to state the user email. So we'll create a dictionary here saying that user email is user.user email. So basically what we are trying to do here is we are storing the email ID of the user in this particular variable user underscore email. Similarly, and this is being stored in a dictionary. So it's, you can, as I told you, you can consider session as a dictionary. We are creating the keys such as user email and user role, because we need to also store the role of the user, because if it's the user as an admin, we need to redirect it to a different homepage. Basically, we need to redirect it to the admin homepage, and if the user is an customer, we need to redirect it to the customer page. So based on its role, we will be redirecting to different pages. So in, for that purpose, we are storing the user role as well into our session. So we say user role, and we can just say is equals to, since if you remember here in our models.py, where is the models.py file, we have created the roles as a relationship here, so we can directly access the roles, like, in, it would, like we have discussed this, that it would be a list of objects. So this particular so if you see here, this particular role, this particular relationship role, if we fetch a user information, it would be like a list of objects, and it would be a list of object of a role class. So what we can do, we can just say for role, role dot name, to access the name of the role for rolling user dot roles. Do you want me to explain this particular part? Please let me know, or you have understood this. Line number 40, this particular, the highlighted area. Have you understood this?
Yes, the loop, right?
The loop, but on which thing we are looping for? Okay, I'll just give, I'll emphasize on one thing. So what is this user dot roles? So this user is an object of the class user, and it has some attribute or relationship called as roles. Here in customer details, if you see, we specified use list as false, which we didn't do in the roles table, in the roles relationship. So here the roles is like a list, and list of object of the class role. So it's like a list of object roles, and each element of that particular list will have its attributes such as ID and name. Okay, so this user.roles is a list of role object. So we are accessing each of that object. So this, the data type of this particular role is an object, and so we can access the ID and name, but we are trying to access the name. And why we are doing it? Because if you see, we have added a particular user which has two roles. Admin has a store manager, the role as a store manager. Also it has a role as an admin. There are two roles for a particular user, so we are storing both the roles into the user role object. I hope I've made this particular point very clear now. If you have any confusion, please let me know.
So this user role session will also be having an array of roles, right?
It would be having
A list of
of
roles.
strings, array of strings, because now this role dot name, we have made it a string. Yes, it would be a list of string elements, like string admin,
So
string
list of
store manager.
names of role.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So now that's how we have stored the information into the user and into the session. Sorry. And now once we have done that and we have authenticated the user, what we can do is we can say we can flash a message saying that user has been successfully logged in. User success SU successfully logged in, and we'll redirect it to the something called, and we will redirect it to the home page. Redirect to something. We will redirect it to something, but for now, I'm keeping it as an empty. We need to work over here. We need redirect it to the dashboard or the home page. But since we don't have any templates for the home page at the moment, I'll revisit this particular portion again. Similarly, I told you that I will be revisiting this particular portion. But now, since I explained you that if a user has been logged in already here, right, there would be some information like user email and user role in the session, right? So if I'm sending a get request to the endpoint slash login, if and in my session there is already this information user underscore email, then it means that I have already logged in. I don't need to enter the details again, and I should redirect basically to again to the home page, right? Did you understand this particular point, what I'm trying to say over here? That if user is logged in, I don't need to show the login page to it.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so we'll do the same check. So what we'll do, if user email is there in the session, we'll redirect you to something, and the something which I discussed like this here, right? We'll be redirecting to the home page. How we will be redirecting it, we'll revisit it later. But that's how we will be redirecting it. I hope this particular thing is correct on the login. Let's do one thing, and we'll save this particular file and we'll see if we are able to log into the particular page. And for that to log in, before that I have been using, I'm flashing the message here. If you could see here, I've used flash messages. So I want to explain this a bit. So I'll go to the Jinja documentation, not the Jinja documentation, to the Flask documentation. So there is something called as message flashing. So we have used sessions. If you want to read more about sessions, how sessions work, you can just directly go to this particular URL and you can access. I've shared the link for this Flask documentation. So now I wanted to focus more on message flashing. So yep. So we have used this something called as flash over here. You have seen how we are using the flash, and there is something called as the function which is being provided, such as get flashed messages, and we can use this particular method to see which all messages have been stored and sent to the flash. So if you see a full example here, message flashing, and if you see here the similar things which you have done, right? User has been logged in successfully and we are flashing the messages, but how we will be displaying that into our templates is what we need to see now. So do you see here this particular block over here? This might be looking a bit new, but if you see here what is happening, can you try to understand what is this particular block? And I'll explain this for sure, but I want you to see and read this code and try to understand what is happening here. Did anyone get this code? Varun, Arnav, Essas. Varun, you're on mute. Hello? Okay, there might be some network issue with them. Arnav, Essas?
So what I think it's about how the messages will get flashed. Basically, there is making a unordered list of class called flashes. So I think I understand that.
Yeah. So basically what is happening, so this get flash messages is coming from Python, okay, and this code we are writing into HTML. So we can use the functions of the Python in Jinja template, but we need to specify those functions inside these kind of percentage and curly braces. Here, this is the with keyword which is being provided by the Jinja. So what is we are doing here is, so whatever is the output of this particular Python function, we are assigning it to a variable named as messages by calling the with. So now when we have called this with, inside this particular with block. So if you see here, this is a start of the with block and end of the with block. So inside this with block of, so this is a Jinja block which has been created. So inside this particular block, there would be, there would be a variable called as messages which would be available. Okay. So, and now similarly, we can do conditioning in Jinja and calling this particular block called as if and endif here. So we are checking if this particular message is, if it's not empty, we need to do something. So like do we do in Python, there is this is the syntax for using the with, and we can specify whatever we want inside this particular with so if and endif. We can specify this will only be shown, this only will be rendered when we are entering the template if the condition which is specified after the with if is true. So if there were messages, these line of code will be displayed. So if you see here, this is basically, the HTML tags, but we are using for loop. So we don't know how many messages would have been flashed at a particular point. There can be 1, 2, like it's an unordered, it is like a list. So for we are creating an unordered list, that is the UL tag here, and we are specifying all this. So now this is how we use for loop. So what we are trying to do is we are with the help of the function which is being provided by the Flask, that is get underscore flash underscore messages. This will give a list of all the flashed messages. We are assigning those messages to a variable called as message. And now if that message contains something, that is if this message is not empty, we are displaying an unordered list. That's what we are trying to do here. And I'll be using very similar code. So I'm not focusing, you can, beautify this with the help of Bootstrap. You can include various classes which is being provided by the Bootstrap. But since right now my focus is on the functionality, we'll just take this code. And where do I want to paste this code? So I would be flashing messages all across various pages. So for that case, I have defined a base.html, right? So here, at this particular point, I will display, I'll paste the code which I have taken from the okay, I'll remove this because I have already have that. And endif, end with, and similarly this should go inside. Yep. So now you can think of it like there is an what I have done is there is the one container which is for the nav bar, and then there is another container which is for this flashed messages, and there is this block which we have defined as a content. So the page has been divided into 3 sections now. And this since we are inheriting this template in all across all the pages, so this this particular flashes will be available all across all the page. I hope you have understood this, and we'll save the template here now, and we'll go to the login. That is completely all right. Right now we have written the code here for the app.route, but since when we are running our main.py file, we don't know, we need to call those file from auth.py file into the main.py file. So what we will do here, once we have defined everything, at this particular point from will import all the routes which we have defined in auth.route.py file here. So controller.auth routes ROUTS will import everything. So all the routes which we have defined in auth, we have bring that to the home page. Sorry, main.py file. I can remove this because I will be taking these 2 routes also into a different file. That is all right, I guess, with you guys. Then we can test whether the login is working properly or not now. So I come to the main.py file. There is, let me close this once. PowerShell. Okay, let it load for a moment. I'll remove this. I don't want this thing. Yep, I'm at my folder directory. I'll activate my virtual environment. .env/script/activate, and once my virtual environment is active, now I can run my python main.py file. We'll see if there are any errors. Yep, it has run now. So let's go to this particular point here. We are on the home page. Right now this is showing, even though we are at the home page, it's showing that this thing because of this particular route, right? But I want to visit /login. Okay, now I'm at the login route and the template is being shown here. So let's enter the admin details, and the password is, and if I click on the login, there is a server encountered internal error. Either server is overloaded or the error in application. So let's see what error is there. So we were using redirect. So if you see here, when I was specifying the routes, we got an error saying that redirect is creating a problem for us now. So for now, what we will do, just to overcome this error, we'll create a new file in templates. Would be like an home page, home.html, and here we'll extend base.html, and welcome to. We are putting some very dummy template for that. We'll modify it later, but for now, in order for things to work properly, I'll create a new file for another routes, the journal routes, and routes.py, and here I'm defining I'll take out all these imports from here, put into the routes.py file, and what I will do, I'll create this @app.route, and this would be login, define home. All right, saving this file, and then from the main.py file you could see that there are two. I've defined the same routes for the two functions. I'll remove this from here. I'm taking all these things from here and putting that to the routes.py file to maintain the consistency. I've taken the code from the main.py file and have put that code into routes.py, and similarly the way we have done for the routes, auth routes, will import the routes from there. So I've this had cleared my main.py file, and all my routes now would be in my routes.py file, all auth routes. So in my this thing, I'm now redirecting to the home page, rendering this thing. So now how this redirect works, right? So inside this redirect, we need to specify the path to which we want to redirect it to. Either you can specify the path like this here, which I'm trying to do here is, I can specify the path to which I want to redirect it to, or I can use a inbuilt function which is URL for. And how this URL for works is, I can dynamically create the URL for by specifying the function name which I have defined here. Here I've defined a function name as home, and if I want to redirect it to this particular function, it will automatically fetch the path. So if I do here, I'm redirected to the home. Now the value of this particular URL for would be slash, basically the slash, so which we have done here. And how this thing URL for help us is, let's say that at a later point, if I change the URL from slash to dashboard, I need to if I do this thing, I need to specify here. I have to do this thing manually, but I don't need to make any changes here, because it will automatically detect that now the path of the function home has been changed to slash dashboard instead of slash. Did you understood the advantage of using URL for here?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, so I'll correct this again, and I'll save this file here, and in my similarly I will save this auth routes where I've specified redirects, and hopefully will not get any errors now. Let's see and restart our server. Let's go and come back, refresh. User successfully logged in. Though you see here a message has been flashed here because we did log in properly, but the error came at this particular point. If you see, so all the steps have been already done. That's why we are receiving the message here like this. So you could have basically put entire thing. This entire thing in try catch block to ensure that if error comes, you can put everything into the try catch block to avoid the inconsistent which we just saw. But I'll leave that for you guys to figure it out how you can do that, because it's easy at that particular point. And yeah, let's try one thing. So once a user is being logged in, how session is being held, let's go to the inspect. Okay, and so this is a developer tool which you can go in the application. There are cookies, and inside the cookie you see the session information is there, right? So this is if we get the whatever information which we have stored here, it gets as a cookie. So this whatever we have done here, this information is being stored into the cookie. So if you see, if I remove this thing here and I visit the /login, now it shows me the detail. And so as soon as I will enter the admin details here, admin@gmail.com, password here, if I enter it, a set cookie has been stored. A cookie has been stored here, and the name of the session is here. And we also getting the flash messages. All right. So that's how you can log in a user, and this session is available throughout, so we can use it. Now let's quickly create the functionality for logout as well. So what do you mean when we are trying to log out is basically what we want to do is, so the way I manually deleted this session right here, when I click on the logout button, I want to remove this cookie from my browser. That's how I'm implementing the login. And so I will do app.route, and this is I'm creating in my auth routes.py file, saying that /logout, and the method it accepts is just get, so I don't need to specify it. Logout. And so what it needs to do, so if it checks user email in session, if that is, I'm checking whether the user email is not there or is there. So if the user email is not there, that means that you have not already been logged out. Why you're trying to read it out, right? So we'll flash a message saying that you are not logged in. But if and we'll redirect it to the login. We'll redirect it to home page. Since you are not logged in, we'll redirect to the login page itself. Otherwise, what we will do, we need to remove all this information from the email ID, user email and user role. We need to remove that from the session. So how we can do that? We'll just simply say session. Since I told you that you can consider session as a dictionary, and dictionary has a keyword called as a function called as pop. So we will be using the same thing, pop user email and session dot pop, and also we'll remove the user dot role. All right, and then we'll flash the message saying that you have been logged out, and we can redirect to the login page now. So any doubts here in what we are trying to do here?
So if that user email is not defined, will it throw error using this pop method? No, right?
It will not. It will not throw an error, as far as I know. Yeah. So I'll save the file now. I also have now got an endpoint for logout, and let's restart the server. We have started the server. see, if I go and visit the login page now, even though I'm sending a get request, I am being redirected to the home page. The reason is the check which we are doing here. This check which we are doing here, this check is also working because the user information was there, and it was redirected to the home page. But now, if I go and I want to check my logout functionality, I'll visit the logout logout endpoint. I have been logged out. You have been successfully logged out, and it gives us the login page now. And you see that session information has also been vanished from this thing. Did you observe this thing? All right. So I'll move ahead now. If you don't have any doubts, or if you want to ask anything, please let do it now. And other than now, we'll move forward to the register now. Any doubts?
Not from my side.
Okay,
And
I'm assuming no one has doubts, so I'll move ahead. And for register, we need to have a page. Basically, we need to have the form which we need to create. So let's quickly create a template here and for the register as well. Register.html. I would be creating. I'll take the login HTML itself. I will be creating the template from here, and I'll be pasting it here. I will make changes. So instead of login, it would be register. The action which to the endpoint which I want you to sign up, sign you up, or let's call it register itself. And I am sending a post request. Row justify content, and the top margin should be 5. What all information we need for the register? Basically, we need these 5 things, these 4 things: username, password, user email, rules, right? So we'll quickly add that here. So it's a password thing. Email is there, password is there, and we need to take the username. So I'll copy this. I'll create a new thing for not email but for verify password. Okay, for that I need a name, and I can call it as a user name. And what else I need? I need to verify the password, so I'll create one more. This attribute, control set. And this is for confirm password. Type is password. Will change the input ID because it should be unique. The ID should match, but it should be unique. There shouldn't be any duplicate IDs. And yeah, and here it should be confirm password, because the names which I'm attributes which I'm the names attribute for each input tag should be unique, that I'm trying to do here. So I have name, email is there, password is there, username is there, and now I can also add input box or a radio button. Dev class is equals to mb3. All right. I need to get a radio button here. So what I will do, I'll go to the Bootstrap documentation. Bootstrap documentation. Quickly, I'll from the I need the radio buttons because a user can have only one. So this is checkbox and this is radio. So I'll take this code. Okay, input group prepend. There is few things you also should know when you are doing the radio button. For that, I'll go to the MDN documents. HTML documentation for the radio buttons. So we need to check how we can have a unique thing. So let's quickly go to the input tag and the input type to be radio button. Yeah. So so we have this thing. So in the when we are defining a radio button, we need to have an ID and same label for that ID. That needs to be done, taken care of. And we should also specify the name here. And the name should be same. And we also specify the ID. We need to take care of this, and there is some attribute called as value. So that things are there. So now let's come to the page, and also for the documentation part. Okay. So what we need to do here is first, as we saw in MDN documents, there are various attributes which we need to focus on. The first thing is we need to specify the ID, and this ID is for the role called as in we can create create a register for two roles. One is customer, another is store manager. So this ID would be, let's say, for store manager, and for this ID is there. The name which we want to specify it is same way we have specified the name for various input tags. The name is role. That's how we will be accessing it. And so when a user selects this particular role, what should be the value or the ID? So we are giving the value as a store manager, the string store manager. Okay, you can give the that's the one thing. So if this particular input box is being selected, then value is what is being sent. So this name tag, name attribute, and the value tag is important. And this ID we are defining to make sure that when we are giving a label, and the label for it would be, so this particular ID, the label is store manager. That's what we are trying to do here. Similarly, this thing we can replicate, and we'll replicate it for this would be not admin, customer, customer CST on here. Similarly, this ID should be same, so I'm putting it here, and the label can be customer. All right. Once we have created this input tag, okay, this is how I have created input box. If you want to understand what I have done, please let me know any line of the code which you want to understand. I've tried my best to, don't go into very much details because that is not required, but I've tried to manage to explain it. I've taken the code from the Bootstrap, and important thing which I need to focus on is there's various labels. The one is label for is the entire radio buttons. That is the one label, and there are these input boxes which are being here, the input box and the label for that particular radio. So that's what we are going to do. You need to focus on these various attributes like ID, name, and value. That is important. So when you click on this, but when you select this particular radio button, this is the value which is being passed to the server, and the key for that is role. So if you see here, I have given the same name to these roles. So if you select any one of them, the value, the key for that would be role, the way it has been for the user underscore name, and the value would be what we are passing it here. We can pass the ID of these roles, or we can specify the name. That is up to you how we want to do it. But these are the few things which you want to take an note of, and the rest of the wrappers like div and everything, that is coming from the Bootstrap for the styling part. I hope this part is clear. Any doubts with this?
I'm not as in doubt, but I'm just curious how that loads the relationship once submitted.
Can you come again?
This customer and store managers are relationship also, right?
Yeah. Okay, so the execution part on the backend, how this data would be stored, we'll come to it when we are writing the routes. I don't want to touch it here, but the code HTML, from the HTML point of view, did you understood this?
So from HTML, it's only variables right now, right? This customer is
Correct. Like we
okay,
have
okay.
these are just the variables and nothing else from the HTML side. How we will be transitioning it to the relationships and all, we'll be seeing when we are creating the user, or basically when we are
Okay.
creating the routes for it. So quickly, let's create one route, and in on.routes, let's create the route called as an @app.route, ROUTE route / register. Method would be again get and post, and we'll define a function called as register. And we did the way we did it for, we first check whether request.method is get, and we can render the template which we just created. The rest of the part I'll remove it. ChatGPT is ahead of me, but I don't want to go there. So this is render template register.html. The name is correct. You can put your logic here for the data validations for like session, whether the user is logged. If the user is logged in, you can't allow it to register on all that logic. You can check and pass it here if you want to, but I'm not showing it because I've already shown for the login. And that's up to you how you want to design. But just to see if the template we have created is how it is looking, I have created the one page, and I've saved the file. I've saved the register.html file. All my files are saved now. Let's stop the server to see the template which we just created. All right, and we can go to register. Yeah, this is how our page is looking. And if you see, let me hide this for a moment. This is how it is looking for now. But we can correct this orientation. We can correct. We need to change the login to register. And if you want to put an heading for like a register or something, you can do that. But yeah, also there is something which you need to change here. The type of this is coming out to be an email because we just copied it, but it shouldn't be email, it should be a text. So we need to correct this. Apart from it, we are getting the template, and the radio buttons are coming like this. We can select only one because we have given the same name for them. Because of the same name, if you don't give this attribute, you can select both the radio buttons. That's the property of the HTML. So a few things which we need to correct is one is this form label, and for that I can take this label out of here and I can put it here, and I can cover the entire thing with the div block. So this thing what I'm trying to do over here, how I know what I need to do is because I've got the practice. But even if you will look for the if you build one or project and you work with the bootstrap, you would also know how you can do all these things. But for now, you can trust me on that this is coming from all from the bootstrap documentation. Let's save this. And also for the username, the type should not be email and it should be text. And we don't need to give the placeholder, so I'll remove the placeholder from here. The form label, yep, and this thing. If I don't want to give this text again and again, that's completely all right. I'll give it, no problem with that. So what other things which you need to correct? I need to correct this, I need to correct this, and I think others are okay. Also, I need to put an heading here. So let's put an h1 heading here, and we'll say, I will also specify a class saying text center. Save. Let's refresh. Okay, I have saved the file, but I need to restart my server. Okay, let's refresh the page now. Heading is coming. This thing has been taken care. These two things can be also come side by side, but you can look for the bootstrap for that, how you can want to design. This has been corrected. All right. And there is one more thing which we need to correct, and that is instead of login, it should be register. Apart from this, the templates look fine to us, right? So we can go ahead and start working with the server part of it, like how we handle this thing. So what we can do, let's go to the auth_route.py file. We have already a function which is taking care of the get. So when we click on the register now, we need to handle the post part of it. So we'll say request.method is equals to post. So what happens when we enter the data? If the request is post, first thing which we try to do, or which we do always, is to get the data from the form. And the way to get the data is like we'll get the email, the way we have done for the login as well. This part is same. request.form.get email, and none. And then we need password request request.form.get, and it should be password, and it should be none. If we don't have any password, it should be none. Then we also need to get the confirm password from there. CONFIRM, confirm password. That's the one of the input which is there. The way we have done the password email, similarly we'll get the confirm password. Similarly, there what all fields were there in register.html file. We have taken the three. We have taken the email, we have taken the password, we have taken the confirm password. Now we need to take the username. And the thing with the name is given is like user underscore name also. So user underscore name is request.form.get the username. And next thing which we need to take from the input is this radio button, and it would be like the value here. So let's take the role is equals to request.form.get. So it would be roles, I think. What name we have given? We have given role. So come here, we'll specify the role here, and the value is none. I need to check the spelling of this, request. All right, so now at this particular moment, all these values are string. The role is not an this particular role is not an object, like because we have defined the relationship. Similarly, the username and everything here is a string. First thing which we need to do, like the way we did, is data validation. That is, we need to ensure that whatever data we are getting from the client, we need to check it before entering details into the data. So you can do various kind of data validations. I'll do certain. That one is that since all the fields which we have defined in our models.py file, if you see here, this everything is not nullable, right? So we need to make sure that we are getting everything correct. So if any of the thing which is not present, like email ID is not present or password and everything is, so we'll flash a message saying that it requires all the templates, and we'll re-enter the template register.html. The next validation which we need to do is whether user has entered the same valid email. For that, the way we have done it for the login, we'll also check it here, saying that @ should be there. And if @ is not there, we'll flash a message saying that you have entered an invalid email. Similarly, now we need to check that password and confirmed password are same. So that we can do, if password is not same as the confirmed password, we can flash the message saying that the password and confirmed password don't match. And we can also add in one more constraint here, that password length should be more than 8. One more data validation, which, so these validation depends on the developer or the requirement of the application. Right now I'm just putting some of the data validations. This is not an exhaustive list, which I've already told you. So you can set up all this thing. So the thing which I want to do right now here is password, or okay, let me specify that len of the password should be greater than or equal to 8. And that's the one data validation which I'm doing on the password. Once I'm done with all the data validation, now here comes another part of data validation. That is, since we know that email in our when we defined our models.py file, what we have specified is email should be unique, right? So we need to check whether already user exists or not. So in order to do that, what we will do, we'll first check our database with the user dot whether the user exists or not. If user exists, we need to flash a message saying that user already exists. Please sign in, log in, or use another email, and I can redirect it to the template. So that's the one check, ensuring that we are allowing the unique users to enter into a database. And if that is done, now we know that at this particular point, now we know that we don't have any user with this particular email ID. I need to create the user. So the part which you were coming, right? So if you remember in our main.py file, how we have entered the user, how we have entered the roles right here, we created an admin role and using the this thing, and then we entered the details like this. In very similar fashion, we will be creating an object of the role class, and then we'll pass that role as in here. So it's in very similar fashion. Right now, the role here is a string. We can't enter the string as such because that is a relationship. We need an object of the class role, which is being defined in the models.py file. So we'll say get role. So let's say role. So this is a new variable which I'm defining, and the type now will be changing, and now we are getting the, now this role is an object of this particular class which has been defined here, and it depends on what name which we are getting from the role user. I hope you have got the idea how we are getting the object here. Once we know the role now, and we can also pass this, and we can create a new user now. That's the thing which we are trying to do, user, and we can pass username, email, password, all these things which we need, and also the relationship. Any doubts till this particular point, guys? And the doubt how we'll be handling the relationship is also clear, I guess. Guys?
Yeah, clear.
All right. We'll do the very similar exercise which we have done here on main.py file. That is, we'll create, add into the user, database will commit it, and that's how the user will be added. So this is very this thing how we are entering the data would become very repetitive. That's why I've spent a bit amount of time how we add the details if we don't have a relationship. If we have a relationship, how we can add the data. I've spent a good amount of time there because right now if you will see this theme, right, doing the data validation, checking everything is correct and putting the database, this theme would be repetitive. So db.session.add will add this user, and once the user has been added, we can say db.session.commit, and we can flash the message that user has been registered successfully, and we can redirect it to the login page. Any doubts? And that's how we have created our register as well. So let's save this file. Let's run our application and try to register a store manager as well as a customer for now, and see if we are able to add both the users. So we have run python main.py file. Come back, we'll refresh the page. Now let's enter email address. Let's say we are entering store manager once, store manager 1@gmail.com. Password, we'll enter the password. And if I click on register, the password should be of minimum of 8 characters. Did I made a mistake in my logic? Yes, the logic should be, it should be if the password length is less than 8, then it should say the password should be length. So there's a logic error which I made here. But let's restart the server. All right, so let's refresh. Let's go to register for now. All right, so it should be store manager 1. User already exists. Please log in with another detail. Let's check the database. Yes, the user has been added. And what's the role? The user ID is 2. What's the user ID for that user 2? The role is 3, and 3 is a store manager. So the user has been added. So the problem which we see here is, right, so there was a data we didn't catch our errors properly here. Mm, that is when this thing happened, right? This error was executed. This one. Yep, I have saved the file and I rerun it. Okay. So any doubts? So we were able to enter the data. Let's try adding another user. Let's say customer one. Again, we'll enter the password as let's enter as a customer, register, and we're able to register the user successfully. And that's how, if you see here in our database now, if I refresh, the user which I wanted to add, customer one, has also been added. So we are able to do register, we are able to do login and logout. So let's see if I try to enter user one, store manager one details, and if I'm able to log in or not. Store manager. And I'm able to log in. So login, logout, and register functionalities are working properly for us now. So we'll stop here today.
Okay.
If you have any doubts, if you want to ask something, you can. And let me stop the recording so that we can go off the record now.